everyone, and welcome to the Continuous Delivery Foundation's panel on why corporations should give to foundations. My name is Lori LaRusso, and I am the Director of Outreach for the Russ Foundation. You might remember me from my previous life and working with the CDF as their Marketing Outreach Director, and I'm so happy to be back home with them talking about a very important topic. So I'm going to go ahead and let everyone on the panel introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Mark.
Yeah, I'm Mark Waite. I'm a member of the Jenkins Project's governing board. I'm a Jenkins plugin maintainer and a longtime contributor. So I've got Jenkins at heart. I'm also the treasurer of the Continuous Delivery Foundation.
Did you see?
I'm Dadisi Sanika, and I am on the Spinnaker TOC. I've been working with the Spinnaker project for a couple of years, and I'm also the governing board chair of the Continuous Delivery Foundation.
And let's move to Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa McKay. I'm a Java champion, loving open source, used it a lot in my career. I have been involved with the CD Foundation quite a bit, was a member of the TOC for several years, and also a member of the Linux Foundation Governing Board for a short period of time. Looking forward to this conversation about a very important topic.
And last but by no means least, Jer.
Hi, my name is Jer McMahon. I'm from Fidelity Investments, and we're an end user member with the CDF. I used to be the end user member representative on the governing board for a number of years, and welcome all.
So one of the things that I think is real interesting about this panel is that I happen to be the only person working for a foundation, and the rest of you are with companies or volunteers that serve foundations. So let's start with the way we introduce with Mark, and why is it important for CloudBees to be a part of the CDF?
Yeah, so CloudBees gets benefit by being part of the Continuous Delivery Foundation because we see real results from CDF's efforts and how they benefit CloudBees as a business. We really see that the foundation on which CloudBees built some of its products, Jenkins, is well supported by the Continuous Delivery Foundation.
Jer, Fidelity. Fidelity is by far a shining example of being stewards of open source and how you give back to the communities that you work in. So why is Fidelity a part of open source and part of foundations, more importantly?
I think for companies like Fidelity who are users of open source, it's really helpful for us to be involved in major projects that are critical to our applications, because it can help us influence the direction of those products. It helps us be maintainers in those products and helps us steer the directions in those products, which both can help our organization and many others. And the more organizations that are involved in these projects, then that's how you scale, and you receive on behalf of others, but you also have to make sure you're giving as well. So make sure that those projects are kind of aligned to your technical strategy and your product strategy.
And Melissa, as someone that was part of a TOC, how do members make an impact to how you govern?
Well, I think a lot of open source projects, think about it, there may be individual developers out there who have started this project, built a community, grown it for years. Some of them are advanced and mature in this way and have a governing model. Some of them don't, and some of them are just starting out and need a little help and support. And I think being involved in a foundation, being able to give that kind of guidance to new projects as well as existing ones that have become popular, I think that's really important for the community.
Now, I think one of the problems that open source in general has, and being a foundation also has, is this idea of free, open source being free. Dadisi, what are your thoughts about open source being free?
I think that that's a strong misconception. Someone is paying for open source. There's always the work is being done, that contribution is happening, and the people who are doing it are giving their time, and companies are donating money. So it's not free. It's just available to the world for free. But if you aren't participating in it and you're grabbing this off the shelf, someone is still paying for that. There's costs out there, and this is an opportunity for everyone to contribute in a way to say, hey, I want to protect not just myself, but everyone else. And that's really the portion where open source kind of connects.
I have to say, I feel very lucky right now to work at the Rust Foundation. We just received from Google two separate grants to help steward our foundation. One was $250,000 for our C++ interoperability, and interoperability is a word that I've learned at the CDF. Thank you to CD Events. But that's an initiative that Google is very passionate about, and to help make it happen, to help the foundation fund, the project moving forward in this direction, they gave us a nice sum of money. And that's not always the case, right? I feel like a lot of times we have to knock on doors a little bit more than we would like. And back again to you, DDC, as CDF governing chair, what are some of the points that you use to help when you knock on those doors to get people to write those checks?
I actually use the connection of protection, how the tools that we build and make, how the things that we maintain are about protecting software for the individual companies, and that connecting process is something they should contribute to because they benefit from it, right? If you're getting a real benefit from the work that's being done, you should be supporting that work. And if you can measure that benefit and you can measure that success, and we continue to move it forward, like you mentioned with CD Events, those are the things you want to be participating in to be sure that the next chapter of the thing that happens is readily available and going to happen. And it's working the way you want it. It's your voice that's needed to be sure that as we figure these things out, it matches your business use cases, right? And the only way you do that is by contributing, but the way to get your voice really heard is by contributing money, right? That's making it go, right? That gives that weight. You are contributing to the community, you're working to be a part of it, and we're working on the end results for you. So here's the opportunity to do that.
Lori, I think your story of Google's kind donation to the Rust Foundation is a good story to springboard off of for how important it is, not just for the large organizations. We are certainly deeply grateful to and very dependent on large organizations and their willingness to contribute. But there is an element that small organizations can and should do that would help foundations like the Continuous Delivery Foundation. Small organization contributions from many organizations can be every bit as impactful as those large contributions, and in fact less susceptible to being disappeared, right? So many organizations, many small organizations contributing, choosing to become a member of a foundation can actually be every bit as powerful as large-scale organizations like the Rust Foundation's contribution, like the contributions from AWS and from Azure, like those kind of contributions are wonderful. We need to augment those with small organizations saying, hey, we're also going to become a member because the little bit we contribute is a safeguard for our company to assure that this thing on which we depend continues to be healthy and strong.
Well, and I think you have a great lens to look through, not only as the treasurer of the CDF, but you work on Jenkins. Now, let's all go back in time, and Jenkins was a small open source project that people took a chance on. And now I don't think you can talk to any mom and pop shop or bigger shop that hasn't heard of Jenkins, is using Jenkins. And Jenkins wouldn't be where it is today if not for, the CDF and for the volunteers, and to your point, the small and large donors that have helped build it to what it is today, which is huge.
Well, and I think one of the ways that companies can think about that question is ask themselves, how important is software to my company? Oh, most companies are going to say it's critically important. When companies that sell shoes have a software development organization, when companies that sell sporting goods have a software development organization, software is that important. Okay, software is important to your company. Which software do you use? Oh, whoops, there is all this open source software all over my organization. And what am I going to do to provide some support to that software, some assurance that it will continue. So joining CDF is a way to say, look, we depend on open source software like Jenkins, like Spinnaker, like all sorts of it, like CD events. There are all sorts of projects that are open source, crucial to company business delivery. And but it's just there. No, it's there because it's been funded and developed and maintained and continues to be so.
I think we might be in a season where we kind of take all of this for granted, right? And I'm going to just tell a quick story from a developer's perspective. My first intentional use of open source. Now, I had been using open source all along. I didn't realize it or pay attention to that because all I wanted to do is get my work done, right? And a lot of the projects that I worked on were legacy. They're already, already there. So I didn't really go hunting for, what parts were. I just fixed what needed to be fixed and moved on. But there was one time when, this was several years ago, I was working on a project and there was a bug. We were relying on a library that did some media manipulation that our product relied on. It was pretty integral to the whole system. And there was a problem with it. It didn't behave like there was a version that got updated. It didn't behave exactly like we expected it to, had to change things around. And that was the first time I went digging and realized, oh, this isn't ours. This is open source. This is something that we brought in at some point in time and have never thought about since. And I'm going to circle back to the whole open source is free. And we take that for granted as consumers, especially developers. But consumers can be caught up in that free to use aspect. And there are inherent responsibilities in maintaining it, updating it appropriately, making sure the license is okay to use, that security aspects have been addressed. And who was it that said, actually, I'm gonna not pretend. I actually looked this up because I always hear this phrase, open source is free like a puppy is free. And I had to go look and see who originally said that. And according to the internets, it was Scott McNealy when he was, head of Sun Microsystems. And he made that quote. And I use that one a lot. And it's so true because just because it's free to use or you're using it at one level at one time in your organization, when it becomes important, now you got to figure out, okay, who actually is maintaining this project? Who do I go talk to fix it if there's something wrong or to add a feature? And that was my first intentional use of open source when I realized how important this is.
Well, Jer, Fidelity definitely owns a lot of puppies. So you have seats at lots of tables. Can you tell us some of the benefits of Fidelity sort of giving back, not just in terms of dollars and cents, but how you're also donating to the big landscape of open source?
Yeah, I think so again, as as others have said here, companies rely on these projects, right? Rely on, whether it's a small library or some very large project, companies do rely on these. And again, what happens when those projects maybe don't support something your business needs it to support, right? It would cost, if you wanted to hire people to go build it yourself, would you be able to build it as well? Or why don't you go into the community and actually say, well, I make those changes and contribute them into the community, into the open source, and then take that contribution back down. We all believe in automation. This can be as quick as or if not quicker, because you could have tens or hundreds or thousands of people contributing to these projects. So you're also benefiting from all of their experience, all of their skills, and the collaboration that's happened across all of those people. So you ultimately get a better product because it's built through collaboration and participation of people across the globe. And there's very little opinions, whether that's an individual opinion or an enterprise opinion built in. And it's more, how does this technology suit the purposes of the requirements that it needs to fulfill? So I think that culture, and the other thing I don't think this is sold enough, is the open source culture, because we work across the globe, we course across time zones, we have found ways to be very collaborative, very communicative, and how to work with everybody and anybody. And I think bringing that culture and that way of working in, I think there's a real tangible benefit to enterprises from working in the open source and experiencing that culture, and then saying, well, why can't I do that in my company? And then bringing that back in. So I think that just makes internally built software then much better as well, because you're able to leverage the best practices of what happens in the open source world. So to us, it's a double win.
I love it. So one of the things I think I might have just kind of glossed over is that we're talking about individual open source projects, but let's talk about foundations in general. So why foundations exist. And DDC, I'm going to throw that over to you. Like, why are we a part of the CDF? Why does the Rust Foundation exist? Why does the Linux Foundation, CNCF, Oasis? There's so many foundations. What is their purpose?
Well, the foundations primarily they protect the projects, they house the projects, and they give you a platform of communication for the project. So a foundation tends to be subject oriented, and so you can focus in on a particular area of expertise. In our case, it's continuous delivery. And then you can bring those experts together. That community building is around that particular concepts. But what the foundation delivers then is, okay, here are the tools to, collaborate. Here's the Slack channel. Here is the infrastructure, the GitHubs, and the place to put your project. Here is the things that allows you to do your builds. It protects you to make sure that all of the DevSecOps portions of delivering software are taken care of. The foundations provide the common framework that allows these products to be taken care of, but also that community. You can bring together those leaders. We have a technical oversight committee, and most of the foundations do, where it's different projects come together and they say, hey, this is what's best for this community. And that voice as a group is concentrated and heard and actionable. And that's one of the primary things that you get from being in a foundation.
And I think you touched on something that a lot of people don't realize is that your contribution affects all of those different areas. So whether you join the CDF because you're completely focused on Jenkins, it doesn't matter because your donations is going to Jenkins, it's going to CD events, it's going to the other projects within that foundation to help make those sustainable. So if you decide to take a peek at something else, you're helping to make that project go. And I think that is something that maybe is lost on some individual contributors because they feel like, I just want to support this one project. But again, a foundation supports all of the projects underneath them. And so I think you did a really good job of explaining like how far your money can go and how much impact it has on the broader ecosphere in general. As we've been talking about open source in general, it's not free. It costs money to run, and supporting a foundation really helps support those projects that you're working on. Mark, from a treasurer point of view, we've seen a lot happen in the economy, here in the US. Numbers aren't great. So what is your sort of all call for, putting your dollars and cents into a foundation?
Well, so we really want donors, small and large, to choose intentionally to purchase a membership in the Continuous Delivery Foundation so that the protection element that Dadisi said and the collaboration element that Dadisi described continues for these open source projects. I'd even highlight one, Lori, on maybe a variant of what Dadisi noted, that there's an element of protection because the foundations hold the intellectual property of the projects. All right, we've had some very, very large scale examples of cases where the intellectual property was taken back out of the public, out of open source, by projects like MongoDB, like Elasticsearch, like Terraform, where the vendor, the owner of the copyright, decided to retract it. And that retraction suddenly meant, it's not open anymore and it's not free anymore. So by choosing to be a member of a foundation, particularly the Continuous Delivery Foundation, you're helping to safeguard your company from things being taken away. So I think that's at least one reason. Software matters, and you need to protect yourself, and it's a little bit of investment in your own protection.
I mean, the cost of licensing changes, like we can't we can't stress that enough. And to your point, I got to work on Valky, which was a fork of Redis. And when Redis made the license change, the community got together and created Valky, and Valky is housed under the Linux Foundation for all of those reasons you just mentioned. It's the security of knowing the product that you chose to use is going to be open source from now until the end of time, and that you have the resources in place to make sure that what you're building is building safe. So I think that's such a good point, because to your point, Chair, as well, the cost of building internally.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and even to echo on that Mark's point is, as an organization looks to select open source, I'm building a product, I want to build an application, I want whatever I'm building, and I want to leverage open source. What do we say? Open source is about 90%, 80 to 90% of the footprint of any application. And, so selecting these things is not a small thing in the scope of your application. So selecting projects which are part of a foundation, one thing's Mark said from a licensing perspective, but it also gives enterprises and companies, comfort and confidence that this project has got life, right? Because there's no point in bringing in projects, that are out random projects that might sit out there and go, well, now do I own that source code? Because there's no one contributing to it, there's no one adding on to it, and it goes very stale. How do we've security, TLM, and all those types of activities. So having as part of foundation gives you that confidence that this is a long live investment. It's not just something that you pick up and drop in for free, and then at some point in time you are going to have to pay a cost.
and I think one thing that we haven't touched on maybe enough is the community aspect. Like, Melissa, I kind of want to throw it over to you about, as a developer, like when your company chooses for you to work, perhaps in a project that how do you get work done? How does the community work for you? Or how do you work for the community?
So I'm just looking at all of your faces on this call, and I'm just remembering all the times that we've interacted in the past at conferences, generally at conferences where the foundation has been, had a place, and just how awesome that's been that we've all worked at different organizations, and getting out of that silo is so important, to be able to get other people's perspectives on things. I'm going to loop back to that story that I told initially about just appreciating open source. That particular project was not part of a foundation. So yeah, all these questions arose like, okay, what about, can we make changes? Do we know who the maintainers are? Where do we find them? So yeah, to the point, having that consistency of being able to find the people that you need to talk with and get involved with, and in their communities. Longevity, the health of the project, making sure that it's sustained, that it actually has a life after the maintainer chooses to walk away. I've been introduced to a number of different foundations. I have a heart for the CD Foundation, of course, because who doesn't do continuous delivery? When is that not a concern of ours? So having all of these different tools under one umbrella is really nice. This is how I met all of you, and got exposed to some other tools that were really useful. Another foundation, Common House, that one is like really focused on the developer, on maintainers, making sure that they have freedom to run their projects, but also to make sure that they are paying attention to sustainability of that project. And I think that's huge for any member of any foundation that is using this software, to make sure that there's somebody taking care of it. So all of that stuff is important. Also, just for someone career-minded, for someone who just wants to improve their skills, open source is pretty awesome to be able to go in there and learn from the other people that are contributing to these code bases, learning different styles, learning different techniques. It's pretty amazing what you can learn when you dive in and get involved with those communities.
So Lori, if I can launch in, what I've seen is amazing results from organizations, companies that used a lot of that open source software and intentionally chose, to their own benefit, to contribute developer time to that. Now, that's different than membership, right? But developer time is incredibly valuable. And they did it because it benefited their company, right? They were sufficiently sized and sufficiently interested to say, we really intentionally will invest in this, and we accept that our investment will be visible to the outside world. And that's a brave statement, right? That is a brave statement. And I think it's a brave statement for many companies, but my, is it worthwhile and useful, because they then start gaining leverage from other people's contribution from outside their company to that thing they were doing. So that's not strictly to a foundation requirement, but it's rather that the power of choosing as an organization to contribute towards open source can help your organization.
Yeah, definitely. If I could just tag on to what Mark was saying, I think the telling my own story, I remember how I met Melissa, and we were working together in the interoperability SIG, and understanding how a different company looked at that problem and having a conversation with someone else, and not just seeing that, oh, this person is not an expert, they're super bright and they know this thing, but you bring a problem case, your use cases, and you see, okay, well, you're a little bit different, but how can we equalize this? How can we make this work together in a way that we can all be the snowflakes that we want to be? We can be unique individuals. We can have all of our company identities brought together, but we can still come together as a community and advance something, right? You can learn something. You can carry that back and change your own culture because you've learned something about another culture. And that impact to bring that fresh mindset back to your own group that you've picked up from, being in the open source community, whether that's how you look at a problem or how a use case impacts an overall system, or how another company feels that by contributing to this change is important. How does that impact us? And you're there, you're active in it. That's the beauty of the community. Like, all of this is available to you. Well, and even, as I look at the group, the panel, I like, girl, dude, like, I've gotten so much from your group and just interacting with you guys, but it's a completely different mindset, a way of thinking about the problems that I hadn't thought about yet. But having that information has been so useful to me, and the success of the project. We wouldn't be here in this point in interoperability for CI/CD without your contributions and understanding your use cases. And so when you join that community, all of that's available to you, right? All of this information, all of these people, all of these wonderful ideas, and all of this expression, come, be a part of that, because that enriches you as a developer, right? Take that back to your company and enrich your company. That's what we do here, and that's what the foundations are about.
I like to think of the foundations as this big umbrella. And when we talk about how it makes you secure, how you get to meet your community, it keeps us all dry. Like, we're all like under this umbrella and being able to work together to get what we need to do things to move forward. So I obviously highly recommend, to Mark's point, companies big or small, contributing to foundations, the CDF specifically, like, again, to Melissa's point, like, how can you not run a company without thinking about continuous delivery and making things move? So I think we're at a point where we can kind of wrap up. So I'd like to get each of your sort of final thoughts and pleas to the broader community to support foundations that we find to be so impactful in our daily lives, that you as an individual might not realize, as Melissa was saying, is something that impacts you because you're using tools that are within the foundation's umbrella. So let's start with you, Melissa.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more important and no better way to appreciate the value than to get involved with these communities. Pick a tool that you use every day. You undoubtedly are using something that has been provided by the community. Get involved with their Slack channel. Just listen. You don't, even if you're not like actively contributing, or you're not in a position where you can spend a lot of time. I know how that is for reality for developers, but get involved with that community. It will open your eyes. You will get new ideas. You'll be able to contribute back even to your own company, and be able to spread that mindset that it is important to support these things. The moment a big change takes place, you'll be able to share with your company, and they may say, "Oh, we should be involved in this." This is something that we all need to help drive forward, because I really think that we just lack a lot of the awareness of how important this is, and we take too much for granted.
Mark?
So mine is to piggyback off of Melissa's, please join foundations, specifically join the Continuous Delivery Foundation. Yes, that means not just as a developer, you need to persuade your organization that they should invest their money, precious as their money is, in a membership in the Continuous Delivery Foundation, because it will benefit your organization, it will benefit your group's development work, and it will help safeguard and protect these precious open source projects that are part of this foundation.
Jer?
I'm going a different. I'll echo what Melissa and Mark said, but don't need to repeat that. But I also think it's a talent attraction, right? But it also is a way for people to get involved in software. With we haven't mentioned AI once, but with it, AI has allowed more people contributing to software. And if we want to open the world to software, projects are a great place for people getting involved, to contribute, to learn their skill, hone their skill, and learn from all the other amazing people that contribute into these projects on a day-to-day basis. So encouraging people to come join a project, come get involved in that project, come become part of the community, as the DC mentioned earlier, and just contribute to growing great software that we can all use across the world in whatever industry or sector we're involved in. And then ultimately having our foundations then supporting those as well is critical so they continue to sustain and they can thrive.
DDC, as governing chair of the CDF, let's get your $1 million pitch here.
Wow. Okay, no pressure. Well, folks, I implore you to think of it this way. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Right now, you're eating off the plate, and there is going to be a cost. And that cost is either in creation or in the crisis that comes if we're not here to continue to protect this. Okay? We don't want you to be left alone. We have community. This is your opportunity to join and support that community, because we want to support you. We want to support each other, and coming together, we've created these relationships that we love to maintain, and we love maintaining that for you, and we're inviting you to join us.
And just to close, recently we signed a letter with other organizations, other foundations, about package managers and the sustainability of open source. Now, this is just one aspect of what a foundation covers, as DDC talked about earlier, the multitudes of facets that we have to support. And wouldn't it be great if you just gave one nice donation to your foundation and didn't have to worry about supporting all of these bits and pieces? Because the mom and pop shops to the big guys are all supporting the software that they're using, so the foundations can run efficiently. We can create the right infrastructure so that our people can do the work that they want to do without being impeded by cloud credits or GitHub, things like that. So when you think about what is being asked now at levels of minutia to try and keep foundations, to keep the lights on for projects, if you could just open those wallets and give us a really nice sizable donation, we wouldn't have to ask for the tidbits, right? So to everyone on the panel, thank you so much. To the CDF, what a powerhouse of projects underneath it that, again, are running the infrastructure that the world is running on today. So if you could go to your guy or woman person in charge of the purse strings and just let them know how impactful the donation they make to the CDF to support this membership, where it can go, that would be the best thing ever. And of course, there are people at the CDF like DDC that will be happy to talk to anyone to enhance the opening of said purse strings. But thank you to everyone today. And I think the main thing we want to get across is that without supporting the foundations, you really are putting yourself at risk for sustainability of the projects that you are working on and the products that you are building on the shoulders of the open source world. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the CDF, and we hope to see you soon.